following podcast has been paid for by Hitting the Turnbuckle. Welcome, everybody, to the Hitting the Turnbuckle podcast. We've got another superstar interview lined up for you today. We're talking to a guy that was portrayed a bad guy in ECW for a little, in more ways than one, but we'll get to that in a minute. Usually he's blue, but obviously the blue's worn off a little bit as with a little bit of age. But it's
It's my
bright.
Clark Kent look. It's my Clark Kent look.
It certainly is. But we welcome the Blue Meanie, aka Brian Heffron, to the show. How are you?
I'm doing good, my friend. Good.
Hey.
Thanks for having me. Great to talk to you. I'm excited, man. This should be fun.
We should be fun. I actually got a story about you, actually.
Oh,
Funny enough. So, as I said before the show yesterday, as I said just before we started the show, that we was at I done my own. We done our joint promotion show. One of my close friends come along, and he reminded me of the story. So I told him I was interviewing you today, and he reminded me of a story that we was at Doncaster in England. You come there as part of a now defunct company called 1PW. You
yeah.
come over, and it wasn't that long since you had been punched in the face by JBL, if I remember
hmm
correctly. And we was in the VIP section. You'd come up to our booth as the show was going on, and we was all wearing JBL tops for you. And I remember Raven absolutely murdering us actually for about that, about wearing it. He was like, I fucking hate that guy when I
Ah,
saw him. But anyway, it was a great thing. He reminded me yesterday. I was like, I have to remind you. Before we get into ECW, what was your fond times of England? You was over a few times. How did you enjoy the English lifestyle?
my brother, I love it over there, man. I first time I went over was for after WrestleMania 15. We did a
Mhm.
tour, one day in Germany and three in the UK. Well, three in England. Loved it, and then went back for 1PW. I have a lot of friends over there, so any chance I get, anytime I get a chance to go over, it's half business, half pleasure because my friends come over and get to hang out and see each other. And last two times I went to London. I went to Wembley for American football. My Philadelphia Eagles were playing there against the Jacksonville Jaguars, and last time we went to the Taylor Hawkins tribute concert at Wembley.
Okay, brilliant. So
I would love it there. We love it there. Go out of our hotel and just walk around, man. Walk through Regent's Park, walk through Hyde Park. Just I love just walking, around around England, and it's a Doncat. You mentioned those Doncaster shows. I sat there and I was like, man, this is a lot like South Philly. Very passionate fans. They got the chance. They know what they're talking about. They know
yeah,
how to bust balls. So it's pretty cool. I love England. I love England.
it was pretty cool. I remember walking out of the VIP section and seeing the Sandman walking past with his cane and his beer, getting ready for to walk out to the music, obviously, of the Sandman. It was great fun. Did you
Yeah.
beat the Jaguars? Which is
Yes.
Oh, good.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
going to Wembley in a few weeks for All In. Funnily enough, obviously AEW
Very
coming back
cool.
over to the UK. I missed the first one. Fortunately, heart failure was the reason, which was kind of a good reason to
Oh,
miss it,
well,
right?
yeah,
Yeah.
that'll stop you. Yeah.
That old chestnut, as we say in the UK, Mister. But let's talk some ECW. So a lot of people remember you from the BWA, but you actually started in ECW with Raven. How did all of that
Yeah.
come about initially?
Uh, you know, when it comes to ECW, I have a unique story as I used to go to shows as a fan. If you watch a lot of those early shows like 93, 94, there's a good chance you're going to see me in the crowd. Uh, and then I went away to train, came back. I just started showing up at ECW shows. I started going back to ECW shows, but then I started doing independents around the Philadelphia area, well, all over. I did a show in Baltimore, a show in West Virginia, a show in Pittsburgh, and all three of those shows was Raven and Stevie Richards.
Yeah.
And they had an idea for a sidekick for Stevie because Stevie was Raven's lackey. So
Mhm.
they wanted to have a lackey to a lackey. And I fit the description, and they had a guy in mind, but he wasn't a wrestler and he couldn't bump and couldn't really move. And they watched my matches and they liked the way I moved in the ring and I could do the moonsault and all that stuff. So Raven approached me and said, "Hey, we're thinking about having a sidekick for Stevie. You interested?" I was like, "I'll be in ECW, right?" He's like, "Yes, I'm in. I'm in. I'm in." And then I debuted the first time. I initially debuted October '95, and that footage disappeared because there was a fire incident that night, and I had to re-debut a month later. But in that meantime, is when Raven came up with the idea for the Blue Meanie character,
Mm.
and you know, he's like, "Yeah, ever see the Yellow Submarine by the Beatles?" I was like, "Yeah, when I was a kid." And he goes, you remember the Blue Meanie?" I was like, "Yeah, vaguely." And he goes, you're gonna be the Blue Meanie. You're gonna love it. We're gonna go home. We're gonna watch the movie. You're gonna love it. You're gonna want to paint your whole body blue, but just do your hair for now." I was like, "But I'll be in ECW, right?" He's like, "Yeah, all right, I don't care." So we went to his house, waited for Blockbuster Video to open. We went and rented and watched the Blue Meanie parts. You know, that's the kind of movie you kind of need to watch. You need it helps if you're inebriated or altered to watch that movie. But we watched it completely straight and studied the character. And November to Remember
Yep.
'95 is when I debuted.
It was. How did, because obviously I'm guessing, although Raven came up with the idea, you had to run it past a certain now Hall of Famer, or maybe not necessarily Mr. Heyman, or maybe some of the others in ECW. But how was that approach? Was it kind of, was it not say instantly approved, but did he have any issues with it happening going?
No, and then, like I said, after I was done training,
Mm,
I'd come back to Philly and I would go to shows, ECW shows. I'd sit in the crowd because I don't want to. But once Raven invited me in, I started going to the shows with Raven and just to be, get my face familiar in the locker room. And then he was pitching me to Paul. He was pitching me to Todd Gordon
that's
too.
it. Tom
A
Gordon,
lot
yeah.
of people forget about Todd Gordon, but Todd's instrumental in the
Yes.
ECW too. And they just went with it. And they're like, okay. And I debuted and it worked out. And I started, showing up to when they were doing promos after the shows and doing promos. And, Paul was into it, and, apparently, I did a good enough job to warrant him continue to use me. So, uh, but mostly everything I did in the early days went through Raven, through that chain of command.
Interesting. And Raven's a
Yeah.
great mind in wrestling. I mean, he's
Oh,
got,
absolutely.
yeah, I mean, ridiculously talented in the ring as well. Very criminally underrated, in my opinion. Loved
Yes.
watching Raven, even throughout every stint that he had, ECW, WCW, WWE, everything that he went into, he done a fantastic job at. Even if they didn't believe in him, he believed in himself, which was the main thing. And he could have done, I reckon, he could have done a lot better if they had
Oh,
given
one of the best minds in the business.
yeah, absolutely. And it wasn't long before that then all of a sudden this blue screen comes on, and I use the term the following announcement has been paid for, but it was going to be by the BW or the Blue World Order. Initially, like obviously you characters, you had Nova, yourself, Stevie Richards, you were taking place of Razor Ramon or the great Scott Hall. When was that was it something that was pitched a while before it happened, or was it something that just come together as the pitch or as it was going on?
That was just the peak of all the parodies we had been doing in ECW. Um, Ravens had to start doing parodies of different wrestlers. We did the Fabulous Ones. We did
Yeah.
Baron Von Stevie, Colonel Domini, Blue Dust, Kiss, and it just we're just doing parodies of you know legends and current stuff. I guess besides the BWO, my other favorite one was Kiss because that was they had just started their reunion, and it was natural evolution to the hottest thing in wrestling at the time was the New World Order. So when you try to remember the story, I remember pitching it, and then I know Bubba Ray Dudley had said, "You guys got to do the Blue World Order as well." And then it just became an idea of trying to figure out what to call it. New Blue World Order, you're trying to think of the names, and we figure, Blue World Order worked out, and who's going to be who, and basically it made more sense to go by size order. Stevie's the tallest. He could be, and he was already doing Diesel, because we did a parody of Diesel and Shawn Michaels. I was the heart attack kid, and it just made sense that he stayed as Diesel. I did Razor Ramon, oozing blue cheese Mo, and Nova was Hogan, and that was supposed to be a one night affair. To the point where we just went and had air shirts airbrushed. If you watch our debut, our shirts were airbrushed. Walked through the locker room, and Todd Gordon and Paul were like, "Yeah, I think we're going to do that again," because they heard the crowd reaction. And if you watch that show, Stevie came out later and did something else on the show, non Blue World Order. But then the next few shows, you know, they went and got shirts silk screened up like the traditional Blue World Order shirts that everybody knows now. Those got printed up, and we started doing the Blue World Order, and then the BWO shirts. Probably, I think they were the second highest T-shirt sales in ECW history. So, a lot of good things came out of that one night. I want that one. I did. It was supposed to be last one night. You know what I'm saying?
It's interesting how things sometimes only meant to last one night and then they just carry on because of the success.
Yeah. Yeah. It was fantastic. And to this day, people still talk about it, and it's amazing. It's 2024, and people still tell me about people. I live right near the ECW arena. I'm a 10-minute walk from the ECW arena.
Wow.
And so I'm in like ECW Central, and people will be like, "Man, I love ECW and BWO," and just tell me about all their favorite memories, and it's great.
Yeah, it is really good. In the UK, we really had difficulty watching ECW, not because it's just because of TV channels at the time. Obviously, the internet wasn't as big as it is now, and we would it used to be on something called Bravo. There's a channel over here called Bravo, and you used to have to be up late. It was like 3 a.m. on a Saturday, like or Sunday morning at like 3 a.m. and you'd have to be like and it would be like a month or two behind. So you'd kind of
Yeah.
if you read up on it, you'd know what happened, but you'd have to wait to watch. I had to get all the DVDs when they come out, but ECW was just so it was different in a lot of ways. It was, the hardcore raw stuff. It was just totally different to what you had on TV. But that was what was so appealing about it for me. You had the characters, you said, like the BWO. You had Taz, Sabu, Van Dam. You had like Rey Mysterio before he really took off. He was showing you how he was doing it in ECW, and it was just. And I think that's what the appeal for me wasn't necessarily the hardcore stuff. I mean, that was great to see someone get power driven through a table in every match, but it was the fact that the roster was so uniquely blended with talent, which is something that although the WWE and WCW may have had, I felt as if ECW utilized it so much better with Paul and Todd, just utilizing that talent to basically their potential.
Yeah, I mean, a good pro wrestling show should be like a buffet, or you gotta have a little bit for everybody. And a lot of people think all the shows were blood and guts, and yeah, I mean there was some blood and guts, but we had some good undercard wrestling too. You had you know you had the FBI, you
Mhm.
guess the BWO, you had Chris Chetty, you had Danny Doring, Roadkill. In the early days, you had Eddie Guerrero, Dean Malenko. So I mean, there's the blood and guts were like a segment of the show, but there was a lot of great characters and great workers on the undercard as well. We called ourselves the land of misfit toys because a lot of us were either wrestlers the other promotions didn't want, or in my case, I had only been in the wrestling business a year and a half when ECW found me. Al Snow trained me, and
Yeah.
I did the Indies for like a year and a half, and then I'm all of a sudden I'm in ECW with such a great locker room to learn from. And yeah, it was a good blend of everything. And it just at the time WWE was so child friendly,
Mm.
which I don't blame them. I mean, if a kid wants to go to a show, that means the parents have to buy tickets as well. So you're getting your grandfather and some extra ticket sales. But ECW just went for you know, those, you know, uh, those blue collar type wrestlers and ECW couldn't happen anywhere else but Philadelphia because, our sports fans are pretty tough as well, when it comes to hockey and the Broad Street Bullies or throwing snowballs at Santa Claus and stuff like that. So, they knew how, Paul and Todd knew how to cater to the city that they ran in.
Yeah, they certainly did. A couple of, it's actually got quite an interesting fan question now. They said that if the Blue WO, or not the BWO, but yourself, Stevie, and Nova, if you were going to take over, you gave us three names. They gave us three factions. Two of them are kind of the same, but they're different, I suppose, variants of it. It said if you were going to be the Judgment Day, what would you call yourselves, and who would you pick to be the three members?
Oh man, that's a great question. Everybody keeps saying, oh, the Judgment Day.
Yeah.
I'm a good friends with Damian Priest. He one of my proteges, but I don't I would have to change it from purple to blue. But that's a great question. I have to get back on that one, man. I have to get back on that one.
Well, the other
Oh.
two are the same, but they're different variants. The one is the original bloodline, and the
Well, we would
second
be the
one is
blue line, yeah.
Blue Line, and the second one is Blue Line 2.0, which is the most recent version.
Yeah.
Obviously, who would you pick to choose?
Oh my God. So many guys. Do they have to be comedy? Yeah, well, we weren't all comedy. Russell Nova
That's
was
right. Yeah.
great. Yeah. Blue Line 2.0. I mean, I would have to get Grado. I love Grado. He could be in there with me.
Who would he
Uh,
be out of the characters that are in the Bloodline 2.0 now? Which one would you?
oh, brother, that's a good question. That's a hard question. I know we don't have much time, and
Yeah.
yeah, I want a half hour being and you know. But brilliant question. I'd have to really sit and think about that. But anytime I get a chance to put Grado over, it's a good day.
That's one. Brilliant. And obviously the original Bloodline, who would you have as part of that? Would
Ah, the blue line. I mean, I would have the shirt that says wreck every bathroom and leave. Um, which I have on my prowrestlingtees.com/mind of the meeting pro wrestling tees page. Um, the original bloodline. I mean, it would help to have Paul Heyman.
Well,
Just
Heyman's there. Yeah, yeah,
yeah, yeah. Paul
yeah.
Heyman would be just Paul Heyman because he managed me in ECW. Well, he didn't manage me; he's my boss in ECW. But yeah, dude, I would have to get back to you on that one.
I'd put like Nunzio in there as Sami Zayn. The honorary use.
Oh, well, Sami Zayn, if I can pick anybody from history, I would pick Robin Williams from Goodwill Hunting, because they basically got the same beard, same facial expressions. Every time I look at Sami Zayn, I look into his eyes and the way he uses emotes it, emotions,
Mm,
it's so good. The way his facials and all this, and he just reminds me of Robin Williams from Goodwill Hunting, you know.
yeah. Interesting.
So if I had to pick an actor, I'd pick Robin Williams to play Sami
Sami
Zayn.
Zayn.
Yeah, yeah.
That would
Great question. Just hard on
hard in a
such a
limited time
short
scale.
time frame. Yeah, I don't
Yeah.
want to waste time.
No, definitely. That's fine. Not a problem at all. Going back to ECW, I suppose let's try and word this one right. What about a funny road story that you can tell that's not pushing boundaries, so it's
Oh,
suspicious?
ECW?
Yeah.
Oh my God. Pick one. Pick a story. Any story. Oh my God. There's just so many. Just I remember just driving to New Orleans for the last November to Remember '98. The last one I did.
Yeah.
Uh, it just that's what I miss about ECW too is the travel. Because
Mm.
we would drive. I we drive in the cars. We drive down to New Orleans, and then that weekend we were part of the Halloween
Yeah.
parade. We got a float in the parade, and I rode down with it was me, Nova, sound guy Randy, the guy who did all the music and stuff for ECW. Most infamously, he did he mixed New Jack's Natural Born Killers theme on the fly. Like he would have two
Wow.
CDs. The reason why the song was able to play so long, he was doing a live mix as the match was going on, which is
Wow.
pretty cool. But we drove down to New Orleans and we're in the parade and you know just that parade float in the float in the Halloween parade was just a cast of characters. I just distinctly remember, Ulf Herman, who wrestles in England, all
Yeah, the flaming German.
just yelling, "Show me yours!" I can't, because people flash for beads down there,
Yeah.
But then Mikey Whipwreck gets on the top of the cab of the truck, and he's going wild. He's throwing beads out, and then the guy hits the brakes, and then Mikey goes forward, and his butt goes right through the glass of the truck, and it's just like, all right. And then he gets up, and then we continued on. But this long drive, just long drives like that, and don't know. It sounds crazy, but a lot of the road stories in East W weren't that crazy because I maybe because I rode with like sane people, like Nova. Me and Nova were just like a couple nerds, people think wrestling, oh, it's glitz and glamour. I was living in Philly. I didn't have a car. I would hop on a bus over and take a bus ride over to Brick, New Jersey, and he would pick me up at the bus stop. I'd stay at his house, have dinner with his family, and the next morning we'd drive off to ECW shows and just hang out. Me and Nova, after Stevie went to WCW, me and Nova became really tight,
Yeah.
and his family welcomed me in like a member of his family, and I would just go over there the night before, hang out, have dinner with his family, and do whatever shenanigans, go bowling or whatever. And then the next day we do the ECW loop, travel and do that. And then on the way back, he'd drop me off the bus stop and go back home. And then this, that's what things you had to do with ECW because, a lot of shows were in driving distance, and it was always good to have a good, tag partner on the road, but yeah, I know you're waiting for like crazy. Let me see. One time I rode with Balls Mahoney, and okay, now it's coming to me. Riding with Balls Mahoney and riding with like Cronus was just like an adventure uh, white knuckle clutching the side of the door like you're throwing a cat in a bathtub, but you'd be riding with Balls Mahoney, you'd be cranking type O negative and driving. And the whole time he's looking, he's like, dude, I'm telling you, I'm like, Balls, look at the road, just that kind of stuff. And just rooming with him was rooming with Balls Mahoney would be exactly how you imagine rooming with Balls Mahoney. And traveling with Cronus was an adventure as well, just and that's what made ECW awesome was this unique characters, unique people in real life. What you saw in the ring was basically those people in real life, and those are the best characters in wrestling.
They are. That was brilliant. That was brilliant. And final question before we let you go, so obviously we are short on time. It's 2024 now. How on earth or would of ECW been living today? How would it have had to have changed? Would it have had to change? And how would it have had to have changed to sort of accommodate the 2024, I suppose, lifestyle it is now?
Well, if you go back and watch that last year of ECW, you can kind of see a change coming.
Mm,
Um, I believe, ECW was starting to that last year they were starting to morph into more of what a Ring of Honor would have been. You know, the Ring of Honor was created by you know, one of the creators of Ring of Honor was a guy named Gabe Sapolsky, who was
yeah,
Paul Heyman's right hand man,
yeah,
and I think him and Gabe would have took ECW more into a like a sports presentation, exactly, high impact, quick moving wrestling, and I think it would have stuck around, because then right after that you got like YouTube and all that kind of stuff,
yeah,
I look at everything independent wrestling has today. I was like, man, if ECW had that,
yeah,
they'd still be in business. But they definitely would have had to tone it down a little bit. They did some crazy stuff. They did, the thumbtacks and the flames and stuff like that. But it, one of the few last ECW shows, guys were in the back like, Joey Matthews and Christian York, who were two of
yeah,
my favorite young up and coming wrestlers. The back seat boys, Trent Nast and Johnny Cashmere. they were about to start. I think ECW was about to start using them as well. So some of the people who were instrumental in the launch of Ring of Honor were starting to show up backstage at ECW. I think ECW would have went the way of like how Ring of Honor was and been more technically sound, technical wrestling, high flying type stuff, but with Paul's vision and Paul and Gabe. That's my opinion.
Yeah.
That was my opinion of where it was going. If it had stayed open, because you just see new feet. I saw new faces showing up in the locker room, and they were really good workers.
Yeah, exactly that. As we go to wrap up now, Brian, you mentioned your pro wrestling t-shirt. Where can people buy your stuff? Where can people interact with you on social media?
If you would like to, if you would like to follow the Blue Meanie on all forms of social media, Facebook, Instagram, and I still call it Twitter,
Yes.
at Blue Meanie BWO. You can follow me on social media. If you would like to support the Blue Meanie, go to prowrestlingtees.com/Blue Meanie. I also have a podcast, which is right behind me, Mind of the Meanie, which drops every Monday morning. We have a Pro Wrestling Tees, prowrestlingtees.com/Mind of the Meanie. We also have a website, mindofthemeanie.com. So if that's for all things blue, that's where you can go to support the blue guy.
There you go, guys. We're going to wrap it up with the Blue Meanie now. It's been fantastic to go down memory lane and talk some ECW with you, Brian.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
No problem at all. Good luck with whatever you do in the future, guys. Listen to the podcast, buy some shirts of the Blue Meanie while you're there. And we'll be back very soon with some more great guests, some more review shows. So keep it locked on HTT Buckle on Twitter, hitting the Turnbuckle podcast on all other social media networks. But he has been the blue guy, the Blue Meanie, Brian Heffer, and I have been your host, Adam Cousins. Until next time, everybody, buckle down, stay safe, and good night.